Inside the Margins. I am Ralph Newell, and today we are going to talk about the importance of data skills, in particular for Black and Brown students. And today's podcast is being brought to you by Tableau, the world's leading analytics platform. Today, our guests are Vanessa G, the Director of Corporate Engagement at the University of Texas, El Paso, and Hillery, Vice President of Community and Impact at Data Stories, where they provide students, teachers, and businesses with the tools, resources, and programs they need to bring data literacy to their communities. So welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
Now, usually I'm just really excited as the moderator because, we're talking about some new subject matter. I've done some research and read up on it, or talking to somebody I've always been intrigued with. But today is like a trifecta. I'm excited not only as a moderator, but as a father, because literally last night, my daughter, she's a rising junior at William & Mary, told me she was changing her minor to data sciences.
Very cool.
And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? Totally, out of the blue. So
what's her major?
I'm sorry?
What's her major?
Her major is economics.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, she's double major, economics and history. But she's throwing the data science. And just quickly, I was asking, okay, well, where is that coming from? She goes, well, I need both of those. I need data science in both economics and history.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Okay. I said, I got a lot for you. I'm going to talk to some folks tomorrow. So I'm going to get back with you. And then ironically, this week, as a business person, at our company, I've decided I needed to hire a data scientist. So I don't know if we're going to, literally hire a person or go to a third party, but it's just interesting that all this is like converging in 1 week. So with that, Alan, I'm going to start with you. Just to, give our audience, I think all of us know at a high level, but what exactly is data in this context that we're talking about?
Wow. So data is, all the information that we encounter, and there's a formal definition, like it's bits and bytes. And then when you put it together, it becomes information. But yeah, data is pretty much all the information around us as far as context for this conversation, from looking at our phones, from checking, for running reports, we encounter data. And I think we're doing that more and more as the days go by, especially in this generation.
Can you give us an example of how businesses or organizations, might use data that an everyday person is aware of, and how that use of data impacted decisions?
Sure. So a lot of businesses these days are online. So there's a lot of interface that happens online, especially as brick and mortar businesses are diminishing, going away. And so since you don't have that face-to-face interaction with customers like you might have in a actual brick and mortar store, companies are more dependent on how people are encountering their websites or their pages that they may put up, or email campaigns. And so that engagement or that reaction to what companies are putting out is what's driving a lot of companies' decisions. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's happening in more real time. Like I remember I've been in email marketing or helping companies do this, where, sometimes campaigns would take 2 weeks, and then people would go through the data and understand, okay, people are clicking here, they're clicking there. But now people are launching campaigns and they want real time reactions. So they're not waiting for those reports to come back in a week or 2 weeks. They're looking at what they call pulse, they're pulse checking. And then with that, sometimes people are, they're going off in a different direction. They're pivoting, based off of those more real-time reactions. So that's one way that companies are using data. And also with even with fitness trackers or anything that we're doing on our phones, we're using that data as well.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. In preparing and thinking about this, I think about data like in two ways. For me, it's always about sports. I go back to that movie. I'm drawing a blank. What was it called? Moneyball.
Moneyball, yes.
Yeah. But, I looked at that as an example of, okay, that was data analytics. They're totally using data to make decisions about, who they play, who they pay, and when they play. And I thought about it in my own life. On the side, I officiate college football. And every week before a game, I watch each team, at least their 3 previous games, if I can. And I literally chart what they do in every situation. What do they do on first down? What do they do on the second? What the offense does, defense does. So as an official, I can then predict what I think is going to happen, and that puts me in a better position. So I think a lot of us don't realize how much data is being used, even in our own everyday life. So there's, obviously lots of uses to it, but, I don't think it's been, codified, for a long time as a science. So Vanessa, looking at it as a science, data science is definitely one of the STEM disciplines. Why do you think it's so important that BIPOC students have data skills?
I think it's super important because it's something that employers are looking for, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can speak about UT El Paso. About 49% of our student population, especially in the College of Business, are first-gen students, okay. Meaning that these students don't have anyone in their households, right, who have experience in data analytics or data science. They're not technically at all interacting with individuals with this expertise. So even though they're getting really great curriculum at the college, they're not getting these additional skills that they need to enter the workforce ready as opposed to other counterparts, right? Mm-hmm. We're also half of our population at the college and university are Mexican American, which again, these are skills that are not being introduced to them on a daily basis. So here in El Paso, our local school districts are trying their best to put this curriculum before our students, but it's still taking a while, right, to get there because we don't have those big companies that utilize these tools in our community. We're not exposing students to this in the classroom. So I think that's why it's so important for students to start using tools such as Tableau to become aware and to become a little bit more educated, because that is what the workforce is looking for right now.
Right. So when you say using tools like Tableau, how does that come into play? How does that work? I mean, what does that do for your students?
So what that does for our students is that it gives them an additional skill. So when they go onto an internship, there's other individuals from other universities, other top tier universities who have already learned this in the classroom. But here at the College of Business, we don't have that in our curriculum yet. So if they're able to come, for example, with this new partnership with Salesforce, if they're able to utilize that new student free license on their spare time, or what we're going to be doing here is offering those workshops through our student organizations, they have that tool. So now that way they are better prepared when they enter the internship, when they enter the workforce, to have that skill at hand, as opposed to our students having to learn that skill when they get that job. Does that make sense? Like now they're entering these opportunities ready to go.
Right. So you're kind of, sort of helping them to bridge the gap when they get ready to have internships or for jobs. But just coming into it, as a field, who is studying data science? I mean, how are these kids, finding out about that?
It's really, honestly, I can only speak to our college. It's all employer based, and it's actually that real life experience. They're not realizing that they need to have this knowledge until they get those opportunities or they go work for companies that are requiring these types of trainings and certifications.
Right.
So that is how I got in touch, because I had several student orgs coming to me and saying, I did an internship and I felt like I wasn't well prepared, as opposed to other college students who were in the same program, because they already knew this, right? So they were trying to learn this new software or this new skill while still going through their internship.
Right. We did some work, a few years back, and, in some other STEM areas, and we found that a lot of times I guess it's never too late, but a lot of times it was too late when these kids got to school because they didn't have a lot of the prerequisite stuff that they needed in middle school or high school, or they just weren't even exposed to it. So, Alan, what are you guys doing? How do you work in the community to get some of these prerequisite skills so that these students can do this work and study this and once they get to college?
Yeah, I do that on a couple of hats. So at Data Stories, we are looking at bringing so our concept is to have workshops for educators to have after school activities just to go over data literacy. And when I say data literacy, I mean just getting more familiar with data. So a lot of times that may be statistics, or it may be just looking at real world data, or the combination of the two, because it allows people to understand that data is everywhere. And it also just gets people more familiar. So our workshops are targeted to high school. And, in my own research, I'm starting to see that some elementary schools are also having flavors of data literacy, or just having more data incorporated into their programs and their classes. Like I was mentioning earlier, data is everywhere. I'm going to probably say that a lot. And it's just that I think that for anyone's success, no matter what their career vertical may be, having that knowledge or having that familiarity with data is going to give them that edge. A lot of what is being discussed earlier with going to internships and just making sure that you are familiar with those tools, it does give you an edge. Being exposed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, conceptualizing it as a field, data science, it's growing. When I was reading, the earliest benchmarks that I could see for it, as a job was about 1995. So, I think we could say it's a relatively new field.
It is, but I also think that there's varying degrees of it. Depending on your major or depending on who you are, you may not necessarily have to be what a lot of the industry is labeling as a data scientist. You can just have that familiarity with data. So a lot of examples that I use is that I've worked in different analytics groups in my career, and we're usually supporting marketing and sales teams. Now, the marketing and sales people do not have to have the same expertise that we do, but if they're getting weekly reports or they're working with tools with us, they can have some level of expertise, not the same, but just having that familiarity. And so the gap that I'm seeing is that a lot of schools and industry, so a lot of schools are not training their students. Though it's either all or nothing. And a lot of the industry is not necessarily outlining what job description should actually looks like. So there's definitely gaps on both sides. And I think just the answer to kind of narrowing that gap is just getting familiar with data as much as you can. And that definitely will begin to close that gap.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to keep you on the spot, but I hear exactly what you're saying. So, when I look at it, the people who they have identified, let's just say as data scientists, close to 80% of them are over the age of 30, most of them close to the age of 40. So there obviously is going to need, a pipeline is going to be needed, So how do we get, parents of BIPOC students, and so I'm thinking of you, Alan, in your community engagement, how do we let the parents know of K-12 students, the guidance counselors in the high schools, community leaders in their communities to have these kids look at this stuff as a potential career?
It really comes down to educating people on the career path. Vanessa made a very good point that a lot of BIPOC students tend to still be first generation going to college. So there's not always a lot of people to fall back on in terms of your family or friends to kind of say, oh, what can I do when I with this? And so I think more education needs to happen around career paths, because again, as BIPOC individuals in general, we may not have the resources to pursue an advanced degree. I mean, so a lot of times we're picking that for our bachelor's degrees to get us into a good career track. When I say good, it kind of makes sure that you're making money, right? So a lot of times you may pick a safe major, or you may pick a safe career path. Whereas data science, sometimes you do need that advanced degree. Or there's also, again, to what Vanessa was talking about, the math and the science isn't there for a lot of, it's definitely growing, but it's not there fully for BIPOC neighborhoods and school districts. And so there's a lot of that education of the career path. And there's also educating the students, because half of the challenge is seeing yourself.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times you don't see yourself. So you don't understand what you could be there. Like you may not be Mark Zuckerberg. So you think, oh, well, I'm not going to run Facebook. I can't do that. So a lot of times you have to educate people that there are other avenues and other ways of doing that. And I think schools are definitely getting better at that, but that's definitely what we have to continue doing.
I mean, you bring up a very good point, seeing yourself. So, I was looking at the numbers kind of twofold, and we won't dwell here, but just in the data science field, and these numbers were, I think, these were as of 2020. So you guys may know if these numbers have changed. I'm assuming they haven't changed much since 2020, but 79.6% of the field are men, 20% women. But when we break it down and look at Latinos and African Americans, the combined representation in data science was 6%. So looking at the latest statistics, again, like I said, I had from 2010 through 20, the African American percentage went from 7.2% to 1%.
Oh, wow.
And Latinos during the same period of time went from 3.3 to 5.2. So, I mean, either of you, how do you explain that drop? And then obviously, Alan, as you said, that's a problem if these kids aren't seeing themselves in these jobs.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with those numbers. I'll definitely. I'm not familiar with those numbers. Okay. I would say that, I don't know. I think a lot. Well, one thing I will say too is that a lot of times, BIPOC students don't have the support when they're in school enough. Like sometimes you have to do a little bit more extra, because you're not seeing yourself, but also you don't have the accessibility. When I say that, accessibility to maybe the tools or the textbooks, or you don't have even the cheerleader, cheering you on. Because a lot of times I can speak a little bit from my path. There wasn't a lot of people who look like me in my path. In school, yes, I went to predominantly BIPOC school, but my major, civil engineering, going out into the world, was not, especially back in the day, was not diverse. And so I definitely feel that there's a combination of things that has to be put in place to keep people encouraged and supported. And also just, the curriculum may even have to change to a degree. But I'll definitely give some time for Vanessa to answer that.
Yeah.
Vanessa. I would say, if I can add to what Alan said, I think this has to go beyond just universities and school districts. I think it's really important for corporations as well to become educated on this, right? So there was this big wave, or there's been this huge wave with DEI, right? Including increasing diversity in the workplace. But I think it's so important for companies to also take the time, especially the recruiting teams, to look at the demographics and look at universities such as UTEP, and understanding that we have those first-gen Mexican-American, that Hispanic Institute, where there's the talent. There's definitely the talent in these institutions. HBCUs have the talent as well, but no one is going into those walls to educate students about the opportunities available in this field. And I think that's key. It has to go beyond just the educational leadership. It has to also be the company stepping in and helping increase those numbers.
No, I totally agree with that. And also just now we're in an age where there's more remote work, but a lot of times companies are located in neighborhoods that are not as accessible for people of color, or they may be in suburbs that the rent is a little bit more higher, or you don't have, public transportation. A lot of those dynamics people don't take into account. As far as the industry and Vanessa was saying, the company's part they could play in that as well.
Yeah. Well, Vanessa, in your role, being a corporate liaison, how are you working with companies in that regard?
So what I'm doing is I'm constantly listening to student feedback, which is exactly how I landed in this opportunity to work with Tableau. I'm listening to students and what they're listening when they go out into the workforce or internships on the skills that they're lacking, right? I misspoke earlier. Our statistic at the college, we're 83% Mexican American.
Oh, wow.
So what I do is I reach out to companies and I let them know we have students in this particular field, or they're studying, let's say they're in finance, right? Mm-hmm. And the opportunities are not there for them because their counterparts at other universities, they have those family ties, right? They have individuals who know someone, or even their parents themselves are well connected. So it's easy for them to walk into those opportunities. But as I mentioned earlier, we have that talent here. So as a corporate partner, how can you and I work together to bring these opportunities to our students as well?
Right. I think a lot of times people, and I'm now speaking of like maybe recruiters, they have preconceptions of what, students from school A or school B may be, and they've had success at this school. So that's where they kind of lean to. But, how do you get your students prepared to talk to these companies, just in particular when they're looking for, people to be data scientists? The question is, what are the skill sets that you try and get the students to highlight about themselves when they're talking with these organizations?
So, for example, here at the College of Business, we're always telling students, although you might not have an extensive work history, what you're doing already on a day-to-day basis is showing your leadership, right? Mm-hmm. So we have students who are crossing the border every day, because we're so close to Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. Mm-hmm. We have so many students, Ralph and Alan, that are waking up at 4 a.m. to wait on the bridge 2 hours to come over and sleep in their cars in the parking garage until their class begins. So that is how determined they are to get their education. But what we tell our students is that when you go out to interviews and when you're talking to employers, you are showing your determination and you're showing your leadership, right? And taking that initiative to better yourself. And these are the skills that you need to highlight with employers. What we also do with our students is we offer a lot of workshops for them to be prepared in having these conversations with employers on how they're able to highlight their skills. Right. But what's been opening doors for us in a lot of fields are alumni. There's always that one student that did not think that they could get a job at Microsoft, right? But they land that job. And then now they become an advocate for the College of Business. And when an organization or a company sees the value in that student and how great they are in their job, they're going to listen now and they're going to come to UTEP and say, hey, we want more students like that. Connect us with those students. So alumni have also been a huge component of opening doors for students here at our college.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, that anecdotally, that is definitely, how it works. You get one person in the door, they can get others. And like I said to you guys earlier, I am looking for, for us to hire our first, data scientists. And I just been looking around and to be honest, I'm starting at ground zero. I don't even know what to look for, if you will. But what, Alan, you have made a career as a data expert. So what was your pathway? What did you think were the skill sets that you had that allowed you to work in that field?
Wow. So I would say, I started out as a civil engineer. So I went to school for engineering. And so at that point in my career, and a lot of times we'll hear this too in technical careers is, the math and science and your degree is supposed to give an indication that you'll be able to navigate. And that is true. But what I also feel in addition to that, what's helped me is listening to others and just some of those soft skills that, again, we're not, especially technical programs back in the day, may not have always done. You had to go to your career office to get that additional, okay, this is how, I should present myself and talk to. But what I would say is that eagerness to learn. And, not coming in, yes, you may come in with a lot of data expertise, but, especially in this day and age, you may not have the business context. And so understanding that and how your business partners are leveraging the data will also make you more successful. So yes, you definitely need to hone the skill if that's how you're going to come in, but you have to leave yourself open to understanding the business that you're supporting. That would definitely, so I think it's a two-way street. So technical people understanding the business and business people getting a little bit more familiar with data. So I think what's going to really help is collaboration.
Right. So, I mean, Alan, you bring up a very good point. Vanessa, and this is a thing that I've been thinking about and as I'm going down this road is the business intelligence. Mm-hmm. How are you guys? It's one thing, like Alan said, it's one thing I think to have all the skill sets, knowing about SQL and other types of, data analysis programs. But if you don't have the business intelligence and communication skills, I don't think you'll succeed in this field. So what else are you guys doing in that regards?
So 2 things. One, we understand the importance of data now in the new business workforce. Mm-hmm. So we're developing a new curriculum around data analytics. Okay. And then again, I mentioned preparing our students through workshops, right? Being able so they can have that understanding of how to talk to employers, the same way Alan said, knowing that language, knowing how to present yourself. Those are just some of the tools that we're doing. But I think it's really just telling our students, the importance of absorbing as much as you can in the classroom so you do enter the workforce ready, understanding the business language. I joke around with companies when I meet with them. It's like, yeah, you all are hiring engineers, which is great, but you need someone to sell that product. Engineers are smart and they know what they're doing and they're building amazing products. But what's the point of a good product if you don't have that business student who's able to sell that for you? Not only sell it, but that business student who's able to understand supply chain so they know how to move that product along the line, or that business student that's able to negotiate those $1 million contracts to make sure that you are meeting the needs of your vendors, right? Right. So it really is just talking about, our business students having those skills that they need to help companies with the other side of like the engineering and the data and such.
Vanessa, the companies that are coming to look for your students, there's a set of jobs from the business side of things, A to Z, they can do. How much of the jobs out there now, what percentage of the job is related to data science?
I would say it's growing. So I wouldn't have the actual number, but it is growing. It is something that all fields are looking for, right? So accounting firms that you would have just assumed while they're doing our spreadsheets and numbers are now looking for experience in data analytics. That number is starting to grow. And I think what's going to happen, and Alan might correct me, but I feel like that field in particular is changing every day. So it might be a matter of our students just trying to catch up and trying to get the skills that they need for these demands in these fields. But every single company and industry that you can think of is starting to ask for that experience.
Right. So in your case, getting the students to catch up, what exactly are you guys doing with Tableau? How is that helping your students catch up?
So what we are going to start doing, because this is new to us, as I mentioned, this conversation began less than a year ago, maybe 3 months ago.
Okay. Oh, wow.
What are we? Yeah, no. So we're in July. So this was in May. I heard from students in May saying, we need this skill. How can we get this skill? And as I mentioned, our professors are doing everything that they can, incorporating some information in their curriculum, right? But they're not industry experts. And they're academia. So they don't know what the industry is looking for as of right now, right? Like the hot trends and all of those things. So when I heard that in May, I connected with a recruiter from Salesforce and I said, hey, our students are needing this skill. What can we do? Then I was connected with an individual who helps with Tableau and said, we have free student licensing that we can offer to you. But on top of that, they started a pilot program that myself and another professor were invited so we could become trainers, so to say, of Tableau as well.
Right.
So that way, this upcoming semester, what we're going to be doing is I will be going into classrooms and telling students there's this free license for you to take advantage of. If you do not know what Tableau is, guess what? I went through the program myself, so now I know how to use Tableau, or so I think I know how to use it, right? I know how to open it. But I can give them an understanding, right, of like, this is how you can use Tableau, and this skill is going to help you tremendously when you go into that internship, when you go into that workforce. We're also going to offer it to all of our student organizations so they can tell their members too to sign up. It's a self-paced program, so students are able to learn the skill on their own. So until our college is able to incorporate that into the classroom, that is what we're doing. We're putting this information in front of our students to get this incredibly great access for free.
Right. Oh, no, that sounds great. I guess, Alan, asking you maybe, or actually, you can ask so to speak, either one. So if you're able to give the access and students of color are able to, and I'm specifically speaking of Latino and African-American students, if we give them the access to tools like Tableau and they get the data skills, what do you think the outcome will be for them?
You're empowering them. You're making them feel less insecure when that other student, right, who might be, I'll just say it might be a white student, already walked in with those skills. And before, our students didn't even know what Tableau was. Right. Now you're empowering them to grow within this new role that they have. You're giving them that confidence where they know that they're going to do the job just as well because they have the skill now.
Right. I'm just thinking about, like, as we talked about this, a little while ago, that this is a relatively new field, and, maybe I'm naive, I am being naive, in the 90s, if you will, that there was a level, playing field that at least, every student in college had an opportunity to get into this and get into these organizations. Why do you think students of color just got so far left behind with data science?
I think for a long time, it's just been, I think it's a few things. I think I go back to, again, seeing yourself. And I go back again to, like, this field or any technical field has always had a connotation of being harder or difficult because there's a lot of quote unquote math and science behind it. I think also to go further at a point in time, you also needed to have a more advanced degree. And so a lot of times there was that accessibility or that not wanting to take that extra investment just because, you needed to get out of the ground running, making a living. And so, but I think a lot of it does start from seeing yourself, and it does start from maybe not having that fundamentals of math and science in your class. I mean, I know for me, I really liked math and science, so that played a part. And I also went and I took a lot of honors courses. And so there was always that need. And even when I went to college, I saw that there were people alongside me who had a little bit more math than I did. And in my case, I liked it. So I kind of went after and learned it. But I say that when you step back in general, a lot of those things do play a part. And not maybe having that confidence or having that, accessibility, or even having the knowledge of like the type of career path you can have. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And I think now, because data has become more invasive or more, it's become more relevant in almost everything, that there's no escaping it. You have to have some familiarity. But at the same time now, I don't feel industry and even education has caught up to the fact that it doesn't have to be at the same degree. In other words, you don't have to be, obviously, you don't have to be a data scientist to be data literate. And, nothing wrong with excelling with data science, but that may not be where you need to go, or it may not be, I just think that there just needs to be more education around the capabilities of what one can do with a data career, or having more data in their career. Because I think at this point, data is going to be a given. Needing to be familiar with it is going to be a given across any career, just because of the nature of our society. But I think, just going back to your original question, it just has to do with not knowing or not having that access.
I'm sorry, were you going to say something there?
No.
Okay. When I look at it just as a career field, especially in some of the people I know in IT, they don't even have college degrees. So and I'm not advocating people don't go to school, but Alan, can people get into data science without having a bachelor's, master's, or doctorate?
Yes, I will just say it. Yes, you can. Now, has the industry caught up with that? Fully no, but there are a lot of self-taught people. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people who have come into a company in another department, like they may have been a marketing or salesperson, and they decided to take courses, continuing ed, and then became, relative a data expert. Now, as for people who have not joined the professional realm, yes, you can still do it without getting in there. And I think, but yeah, those opportunities are not as, and then Vanessa can definitely back me up that I don't think while you can do it without going down the college route, I think the opportunities to get into a business, unless you do your own thing or do something like a startup, it's not as easy to still get into the field.
Yeah, because companies are still expecting that, right? They're still expecting for students to have that concept or to have that classroom experience when in that particular field. I would agree.
Mm-hmm. But again, just in looking at it, I'm finding, at least what I saw, that, and Vanessa, I'm sure you can speak to this, it seemed to be the much larger corporations, your Fortune 500, that are really relying on, data science to make their decisions. How are you guys working with, or are you working with some of the medium to small businesses, companies that have less than 50 people to get this in?
We're not necessarily working with that group yet, but I can tell you a unique group that's starting to look for that experience are local credit unions here in our community.
Really?
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's everywhere. So local credit unions, for example, we used to have a group called the College Business Analytics Group here at the college, and the individual that oversaw that left. So we weren't able to fill that role again, but we worked with a local hospital and we worked with a local credit union on separate projects who were looking for students to help build projects around data analytics. Mm-hmm. So that's just an example of all the different industries, right, that are looking for this experience. And these were really great projects that they put together. For example, the hospital that they worked with, based on the results of their project, that hospital implemented those strategies and they were able to save, I'm not kidding, about $10 million in revenue. Mm-hmm. Out of a project that 3 students, 2 females, 1 male, put together, and just recommendations for their leadership team.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. So we're not working with those smaller companies yet because those smaller companies might not realize the importance of data analytics yet. Mm-hmm. So they're not reaching out to us for assistance and for connections with students. But we are working with other industries that you wouldn't expect of to help provide this service to.
Right. At your institution, and I'm asking this question now, I'm thinking like a father here. I was actually surprised when my daughter told me last night that her school even had a program that was, dedicated to data science. I didn't even know that existed, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I think you said earlier that you guys do not have a dedicated program. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. So we're starting data analytics. Mm-hmm. Our engineering school is starting to also consider offering this as well, because traditionally, am I right, Alan, this lies within college, like engineering colleges? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not necessarily business schools, right?
Yeah, a lot of business schools tend to not have data science. Some are, but yeah, it's traditionally, like you said, engineering schools. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to help out our audience here who's listening, people at some of these other institutions that are listening in. Alan, what if you know, just anecdotally on the top of your head, like what percentage of schools even have data science programs?
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say, I don't want to put a number out there. I had a number in my head, but I don't want to do that. But I will say that a lot of data, I I know traditionally engineering schools, they do have it. There are some business schools that are beginning to have a flavor of data science. And some math departments, a lot of times data science is built around statistics, which it's one flavor of it, but it's not the full picture. But it's definitely a good foundation for those looking to move into the field. But yeah, I can't even begin to quantify. I don't know. I don't want to say a number.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I'm trying to put you on the spot. But, you said earlier that you really like math. Okay. So how much of the data science work that these students are going to do when they get into these jobs is it really just analysis? Because the tools are doing all the work behind the scenes, or how much? And I say that because my daughter, she was like, "Oh, Dad, I'm excited about this because I don't have to take any more math classes. I can get, this data science degree, and I don't need any more math."
Yeah, I was going to say I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I talk about the gap in the industry is that, a lot of expectations is for what people to do data wrangling. So that means like you're using your SQL, you're analyzing data, and also even using that word analyze. So a lot of companies need data analysts. And when I say analysts, they need people to go in and identify the trends, but they also need people to summarize those trends for business people and decision makers to understand it. So a lot of traditional data science people have not necessarily been trained in that. Like a lot of times you have the coding, you have the programming, you have the data wrangling, sorting of data, but telling impactful stories is, again, data stories. I do that. Telling impactful stories is something where there's kind of a gap there. And some companies have actually recruited liberal arts students to kind of do that piece. So like the data's already been summarized. And so the person comes in and they kind of go in and identify trends. And then they kind of put together presentations and stories that are hitting what decision makers need to solve for. So to get back to what you're asking, I think that's also the direction that data analytics and analysis needs to take. We need more people telling the stories.
Right. So am I looking for a unicorn for at my company? Yeah, I'm looking for someone who can do the analytics, explain it, and then communicate it to us and help us make, the right marketing.
I mean, that's definitely been a unicorn, and that's definitely something that I've been talking passionately about. Like, those can be two different roles. Like, I don't think a lot of people who went to school, at least back in the day, and a little bit even now, when they're doing data science and when they're learning all these skills, I don't think a lot of them are looking to necessarily talk to people, or let alone like disseminate data in a way for people who may not be as familiar with data to understand it. So there's definitely, I always think that corporations either need another set of people, or they need to allow people who maybe have a little bit more of that business context to kind of pick up some of those analytic skills, where they're doing the wrangling, but they're doing the trend finding and setting, and not trend setting, but trend finding, and kind of telling those stories for the corporations.
Vanessa, is that what you guys are doing at UTEP at the College of Business? You're really getting your students ready for the analysis and the business intelligence side of it?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. So yeah, as Alan mentioned, you need those storytellers, right? And again, I think I'm only able to say this because I recently learned it myself, but I think that's also where Tableau comes in, where you have those experts pulling the data together, but utilizing that software to tell that story, right? To show the trends and to show how putting that data together can help answer questions. But yes, our students are also learning that in the classroom as well.
Yeah, a lot of times it's called critical thinking. They call it critical thinking.
Yeah. I think that is lost so many places. But yeah. Okay. Here, I don't know. I guess I'll say it's somewhat ironic. Alan, Vanessa, what do you guys think? How can we use? Because I think all of what we're talking about today is really access. And, I hate that we're still talking about this. And I feel like, since I've started working in higher ed, we've been talking about the digital divide. Mm-hmm. And, Vanessa, I think it was, I remembered this during the early parts of the pandemic. And I actually came across it in my readings again today. And I think it was in El Paso, where there were like two students, two sisters, who were like literally sitting outside of a Taco Bell, picking up on stealing their Wi-Fi, if you will, just so that they could go to school. Mm-hmm. So, as two data people, if you will, seem like there's been a lot of things done that hasn't really changed the digital divide gap. How do you think we can use data to close that gap?
I think it's being done now. So to your example, what you said about those two girls wanting to continue learning, but having to go park outside because their parents don't have access to, internet at their house. Our city, the city of El Paso, has started an initiative on focusing on the digital divide through the efforts of our local congresswoman, in which they're trying to get more funding to put these types of resources in front of families and students who don't have access to it. So that's happening as we speak right now here in El Paso. There's committees and there's leadership with both city and the county. And as I mentioned with our representative, Congressman Veronica Escobar, in trying to address those issues.
Yeah. Alan, on your side, what do you?
I agree. I definitely agree with Vanessa that is saying. In addition, I think and Vanessa mentioned this earlier too, companies have to become more involved in narrowing this divide. So working with your workforce development needs to happen more. And I've written about this, and I feel it needs the government. We need companies to come together and just understand that there are people who can gain these skills without going through a formal education route. And if there's the support put in place, from the government and even from companies taking, investing in these people who do this, because our society, I feel it's definitely changing. The traditional college trajectory isn't for everyone. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, there is a need. It's not just like these companies doing, charity. They need these workers just as much as the workers need jobs. And so it's just needing to have that support for these different types of workforces. And also just understanding that the traditional college trajectory doesn't work for everyone, or there's just not, and there's also just so much data. So it's all hands on deck. So there's a shortage of workers, there's people needing jobs. And it's just a change in thought, like how we've looked, society is like how we look at our career paths. So I think that's definitely one. And again, just going in and educating people on the opportunities and just giving that access. Data can help because, we can start to look at communities and see where that gap is and how we need it. There's just so many ways, but that's definitely a way to start.
Okay. Hey, I just want to thank you guys. We're getting close here to the end. Vanessa, I want to ask both of you, I guess, a closing question, if you will. But Vanessa, we like to always talk about best practices and, give that information to our readers and people who listen to the podcast. So based on your experience so far in, the world of data science, what do you recommend to other institutions or practitioners on college campuses to do for their students if they too are and I use the word loosely, lacking, in data science intelligence on their campus?
Absolutely. So I would say for all of those listeners who are in higher ed and want to put these opportunities before their students, talk to your students, right? Mm-hmm. So individuals in higher ed, we're always working on ensuring that students are being connected to opportunities, right? We send them off to apply. We make sure that they're taking the right courses. But are you following up with those students and asking them during your experience, did you feel prepared? And if you didn't feel prepared, what were you lacking? And then based on that feedback, it's important as you in higher ed to go seek those opportunities for them. And that's just the only way that you're going to be able to help students. It's honestly the only way. It's through listening, as Ellen said, You have to listen, and you need to bring those resources to them. You cannot expect for companies to come in and say, we're going to offer this to your students.
Right.
So they're prepared. No, you need to go out and do that for them, which is what we're trying to do now. So yes, we're introducing Tableau, but we're also offering other certifications here at the college based on employer feedback and student feedback on what they were lacking throughout their experience.
Okay. And Alan, what, Vanessa's working at it, at the institutional level. I'm going to say you're more grassroots. So what can we, all of us, the listeners, just in our day-to-day lives or our professional lives, what can we do to help?
Yeah, we can just, again, as professionals, we can help. Like, I'm at a place in my career where I want to give back. So definitely mentorship, definitely, it doesn't have to be official. It can just be giving that advice, letting people know about tools like Tableau. Tableau Public is free. So a lot of times there are people who do not have access to data, or maybe are not in a formal working environment where they have data to play with. So there's definitely a lot of free data sets out there. And you can have people in the community look at their community data. In New York City, we have what we call 311, which is a lot of city data and tools that are tools like Tableau Public, where you can begin to visualize. There's also R, which is a programming language, and it's free. Again, I think what it is like allowing people to see themselves. So for our listeners who may be listeners of color, and we want to help out our younger generation or our colleagues, we can begin to mentor them, begin to give them advice. They can begin to see us and maybe see themselves. Yeah, it just really starts with that. And I always believe attitude is 90% of success.
Yeah.
So, like Vanessa mentioned, her students are crossing bridges at 4 a.m. and waiting to go to school. I mean, that's the type of attitude that will make you successful.
Right. Okay. I thought we were closing there, but Alan, you said something. I was reading, several of the things, in preparing to talk to you guys, and also thinking about, like I said, this position that we're going to hire for. And I thought I was a computer savvy, literate person and programming and all that. But I kept coming across R, and I was like, this must be a typo. What is R? I don't even know what it is.
R is a programming language. It's definitely used a lot. Okay. I don't want to formally define it, but it's definitely it's used a lot. Let me see. I can look it up real quick. But no, it's definitely used a lot. You could a lot of people are visualizing data in R. There a lot of statistical programming happens also in R. I tried to learn it for like a month and just got busy. It's not hard. It was I just got busy.
No, it's like I said, I was looking at, you come across these lists, the top 20 skill sets you need, top 20 programs, and I kept seeing R, and I was like, what is R?
Yeah, it's used a lot in statistical computing. So a lot of times people are using R in data science. It does come up for statistics, and also they have a component where you can begin to visualize your data. So it's definitely one of those languages, I think, because of its syntax, it's easy to pick up, and also it's free. So that accessibility, a lot of people use it. It doesn't always have the nice interface, but they have things for that, or people have built things for that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those up and coming. So there's R and there's Python. So those
no Python. Yeah.
I was going to say Python was another tool that our students were talking about. So we partnered up with a local nonprofit organization in partnership with Microsoft to bring Python training to our students for free as well.
Okay.
And I don't know what that is, Ralph. So in my role, I connect, but I don't know it myself. So I always tell students, here's an opportunity, but don't ask me what Python is because I'm a liberal arts major. So I'm just making that connection.
Actually, it was Python that I was teaching myself. Python is easier. And I think I think they're both free, but Python is also free as far as accessibility. But yeah, I was teaching myself Python.
Yeah. No, like I like I said, I came across the R thing a couple of times of looking at in preparing to talk to you guys, but also in preparing to put out a job description, of what we're looking for. And, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, just looking at what some of other people were talking about. And they were like, okay, you need a skill set and it has to have R. And I was like, R, But anyway, no, thank you guys, so much for your time. I also want to thank, Tableau for putting this together for us. So again, like I said, thank you. And I think the insights that you guys both provided will definitely help out. In your case, Vanessa, I hope other institutions where their students are, struggling in the sense of not being up to speed with where they need to be from the data science standpoint to get these jobs, that they're able to work with their students to emulate what you guys are doing. And Alan, also thank you for the insight that you brought to the conversation from the historical standpoint. So I want to thank you both.